All right, today we're going to be talking about meiosis. There's the page numbers in your book, and you should have a set of notes in front of you so you can just fill in what we're talking about here. The word meiosis sounds a lot like mitosis. We're going to see there's some similarities and some differences between the two processes as we get going through this. So let's start learning about what meiosis is. This is a very technical definition, but we're going to understand this by the time we're done learning about this. Meiosis is a process of reduction division in which the number of chromosomes per cell is cut in half through the separation of homologous chromosomes in a diploid cell. Another way of saying it's a process where haploid gametes are formed. Let's not do a whole lot with this right now. Maybe we'll come back to this at the end. But we're going to do something where we're going to divide something up to reduce the number of something. And that something we're reducing is the number of chromosomes per cell. We're going to see why that's important. And what we're going to try to form are these things called gametes. Gametes are sperm cell and egg cells. So meiosis is a process that makes the reproductive cells, the sperm and egg, whereas mitosis was part of the cell cycle that made the cells of your body. Bone cells, skin cells, lung cells, things like that. Here's what meiosis is in plain English. It's a process where a sexually reproducing organism makes its reproductive cells. In females, those would be eggs, and in males, those would be sperm cells. And another word for those is gametes. All right, gametes is just another word for sperm and egg, the cells of the body that are used to make the next generation of organisms. Let's come back to this in just a minute. Let's do the terminology first. Here we have 4 vocab words. N, it's almost like algebra class. N is a letter, so here I probably should say letter, representing the number of complete copies of DNA a cell contains. So that brings us right down here to this. There are cells called haploid cells. Haploid are cells that only have one copy of all the genes. So they'd be called an N cell, and that's synonymous with this thing being haploid. Examples of haploid cells are the gametes, and gametes are the reproductive cells, the sperm cells in men, and the egg cells in women, and I should say in a male and a female. Diploid, you all know that di means 2. Diploid is a cell containing 2 complete copies of all the DNA. So we could say it's 2N, and those would be the body cells. Another word for those are somatic cells. Cells. And that would be like skin cells, bone cells, liver cells, the cells that make up your body. Those are your body cells. They have 2 complete copies. They got 1 copy from mom and 1 copy from dad. All right, so they're diploid. Haploid are the sperm and the egg. They carry that 1 copy from dad. They carry that 1 copy from mom to make that new creature. And you all know from the health class along the way that fertilization happens only in sexually reproducing organisms like most animals, plants, most fungus, some of these things called protists. But it's a process where male and female reproductive cells join to make a new cell that will become a whole new organism. So let's take a look at this picture. You can marvel at my amazing artwork here. But an egg cell is N. That means it has 1 copy of all the genes. From the mother, obviously. The sperm cell is also N. It has 1 copy of all the genes from the dad. Where all these arrows intersect, this is where fertilization occurs. That's where the egg and sperm combine to become a new cell. The nuclei of these 2 cells combine to make this cell down here called a fertilized egg. The fertilized egg is the nucleus of the sperm cell has combined with the nucleus of the egg cell, and then we get, just like algebra here, N plus N equals 2N. So we've made a diploid cell out of 2 haploid cells. This new diploid cell, what it's really going to do is it's going to start going through the cell cycle. You guys know that is interphase, followed by mitosis and cytokinesis, and it becomes 2 cells. Then those go through the cell cycle and make 4 cells. Then those all go through and make 8 daughter cells, and this keeps doubling and doubling. Pretty soon, you'll get a little heartbeat in there. Little organs will start to develop and things like that. 9 months later, you guys know you get a baby. The baby's DNA half came from dad through the sperm cell, and half came from mom through the egg cell. So that's how this works. So mom gives one copy of, I should say, one allele for every single one of her genes in her egg cell. Dad gives one allele for every single gene through a sperm cell. They combine to make this new creature, which has half its DNA from mom and half from dad. And that's what we're going to learn about, is how do these egg and sperm get formed? How does the body know which alleles to put into a sperm cell and which ones to put into an egg cell? So let me back up here in the order. Let me go back one slide here. So here we're going to compare a cell of the body with one of these reproductive cells that we're calling gametes. Examples of body cells would be skin cells, bone, liver, lung, any kind of organ. So those are all body cells. You need those to build your body. Gametes, there's only two types. There's sperm and there's egg. These cells are only used to make new offspring. The process that makes body cells, you guys know what this is. It's the cell cycle. And part of the cell cycle is mitosis. The process that makes the sex cells, either in the ovaries or in the testes, if we're talking about mammals, that would be meiosis. A lot of books will have you compare meiosis to mitosis. You guys are smarter than that. What you're actually comparing is meiosis to the cell cycle, because you're comparing how these gamete cells get made, and you're seeing if there's similarities and differences to how the other cells of your body get made. You all know body cells have to have two complete copies of DNA. We can call that being 2N. We can also say that's being diploid. Now, why is there two? Well, because we were all made from one sperm cell and one egg cell, and they each had an N amount of DNA. And another word for that is being haploid. Okay, so this is how we can compare the kinds of cells that exist in our bodies. Same thing as plants and any sexually reproducing creature. There are cells that make their bodies. Those are called somatic cells. And there's cells that make their reproductive cells that are their reproductive cells, which would be sperm and egg. So we're going to be focusing on how the gametes get made. And the reason why we're doing that is we're trying to understand how genes get passed down here. We're trying to understand genetics even deeper than a Punnett square. So we have to understand how sperm and egg get made in order to do that. Okay, so we did our vocab here, so we went out of order. We talked about this picture. All right, so let's jump into this a little bit here. Just some basics that you have to understand. Genes and chromosomes are both made of DNA. All right, so that's just a fact that you have to understand. Genes are found organized as little pieces of the chromosomes. So a chromosome is made of many different genes all hooked together, basically. A lot of books say genes are on chromosomes like beads on a string. If you ever went to summer camp and you had to make like a bracelet or a necklace out of little beads, and they gave you a piece of string and you put your little colored beads on there, each bead would sort of be like a gene. Let me jump ahead to this picture here. So here's your little necklace you're making in summer camp, and these little balls here are the genes. Genes line up one after another, and you get enough of them, they'll make one of your 46 chromosomes. So maybe this is one of the genes for hair color right here. Maybe you're dominant for some kind of hair color. Maybe right next to that gene, you have a recessive gene for eye color. Maybe right next to that, you have a recessive allele for blood type. Maybe right next to that, you have some co-dominant thing going on for something else. And I think you get the idea. So we have the piece of DNA for this next to the piece of DNA for this. They don't really look like bubbles at all. It just looks like the double helix of DNA. And they all line up, and our body organizes them as chromosomes. All right, so maybe up here, this is kind of like chromatin, because things are a little bit unwound up here, but this picture's showing them all wound up super tight until we get this highly organized chromosome. You all know it's all just DNA, and here I'm trying to show you the genes line up on here to make this chromosome. Let me back up to this here. And you guys know this. Chromosomes are the way in which a cell organizes the thousands of genes contained in an organism. All right, we talked about holiday lights. You wind them up really tight to organize them, to keep track of them. That's all chromosomes are. Look, if you had 46 strings of holiday lights, yeah, you unwind them when you need to use them, and that'd be like the genes. You wind them up really tight when you're storing them. That'd be like the chromosomes. All right, so we're kind of looking at this same idea, but now we're looking at this is how the genes are actually given to you. Mom and dad just don't give you random little genes all over the place, 20,000 little chunks of DNA. That'd be impossible for your body to manage. So what your body does is it manages all those genes that mom and dad are giving to you on these highly organized units called chromosomes. Okay, here is a picture of human chromosome 7. Now you'd have two of these. You'd have one from mom and one from dad. And it's really small writing here, but people have tried to map out what genes are on which chromosome, and scientists think that these are the genes that are on chromosome 7. And obviously this can change as we learn more. But if we can point out a few things here, most of these are diseases, because when things go wrong, scientists can kind of map out where it went wrong. But down here, towards the lower arm of chromosome 7, they think there is a gene for osteoporosis. That's when the bones get very weakened. Towards the middle, by the centromere, they think there's a gene for colon cancer. So you can see all these. Up here, there's a form of genetic deafness they think is a problem with a gene on chromosome 7. So scientists try to map out what's on each gene, and we're still doing this. We by no means have this all figured out. Just showing you this picture to show you genes are found on chromosomes. This is how your body organizes genes, hooks them all together, and they exist as chromosomes during like the M phase of the cell cycle. Here's another picture of the same exact thing. All right, you know you have 2 alleles for every single gene. Well, this is how it happened. Mom, through her egg cell, gave you a chromosome. Dad, through the sperm cell, gave you a copy of the same chromosome, but it came from him. So, we start going down this chromosome here. We get to here. Here's a gene. Okay, mom gave you a dominant for that gene. Go down dad's same chromosome. Oh, dad gave you a dominant for that. So what does that mean? Right here. That's how you're homozygous dominant. Okay, they each gave you a dominant allele. You got 2 of the same thing. You are homozygous for the dominant trait. If we go down the same chromosome from mom, we find, oh wait, I got a recessive for some other gene, whatever it is. Go down dad's same gene that came to you through that sperm cell when we were all a little fertilized egg. Oh, they both gave you recessives. That's why you're homozygous recessive for that. If we go further down on mom's, we find another gene. Same thing on dad's, and here mom gave you a dominant, dad gave you a recessive. That's why you're heterozygous for that. So mom actually gives you 23 chromosomes. Dad gives you a matching 23 chromosomes. They're matching because they contain the same genes, the P gene, A gene, B gene, PAB, but they don't have to have the same exact alleles on them. Okay, that's how you can be homozygous, heterozygous, and all that sort of thing. These chromosomes are called homologous chromosomes. All right, you all know homologous. Homologous, homo means the same. So these have the same genes on them. But the alleles can be different. So that's what this means, this idea of homologous chromosomes. All right, here's just some facts you need to know. Each body cell of a human has 46 chromosomes. 23 came from mom through her egg cell, her haploid egg cell, her N egg cell, and 46 came from dad through his haploid sperm cell, which was N. That makes us diploid. 23 plus 23 equals 46, or N from the egg plus N from the sperm equals 2N. Okay, these are all kind of synonymous with each other here. Those 2 sets of 23 chromosomes are homologous. We just talked about that. 23 came from the female parent. They have a corresponding 23 from the male parent. We're going to stop it here. Please watch part 2 of the Meiosis podcast so that you can get the rest of the information.